Imagine walking into a doctor's office, frail from chemotherapy, hoping for a routine checkup. You've been battling cancer for months, enduring countless treatments, but instead of care, you're met with something far worse: humiliation from the very person who's supposed to help you. This is the story of one woman's fight not just against cancer, but against cruelty. Sophie, weakened by the harsh toll of her illness, sits anxiously in a sterile hospital room, her hands trembling, her head shaved, feeling exposed and vulnerable. As Sophie waits, her husband, Ethan, sits beside her, offering the only comfort he can, his steady hand in hers. Their hope for a simple checkup soon turns to despair when Dr. Lancaster enters the room. The coldness in his gaze is immediate, and Sophie's worst fears are realized when the doctor begins making harsh, insensitive remarks about her hair loss. What follows is not just an insult to her appearance, but an attack on her dignity. Sophie, usually strong and composed, is caught off guard, but her husband, Ethan, won't stand by and let her be demeaned. This moment will test not only Sophie's strength, but Ethan's unwavering support. It will change the course of their day, reminding them that love and protection are their greatest defenses. Together, they will face this cruelty head-on, proving that no matter what, they are never alone. But in the end, it's Ethan's words that turn everything around, and it will leave you speechless. This is a story of standing up, not just for the ones you love, but for the dignity every person deserves. Before we dive into this emotional journey, hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing, but your support helps us bring more powerful stories to life. Now, let's get started. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly in the sterile, modern hospital waiting room. The quiet hum of machines and the soft chatter of nurses did little to ease Sophie's nerves. The white walls felt oppressive, and the faint smell of antiseptic only seemed to heighten her anxiety. She sat with her hands clasped tightly in her lap, trying to control the tremble that had overtaken her fingers. Today was supposed to be a routine checkup. After months of chemotherapy and painful treatments, Sophie had hoped for a sense of normalcy. Instead, all she felt was the weight of the months spent battling cancer. Her body weakened, her hair lost, and her self-esteem hanging by a thread. The bright fluorescent lights above cast a cold, uninviting glow over everything. The steady beeping of heart monitors and the rustling of nurses' uniforms in the hallway created an unnerving soundtrack to Sophie's thoughts. Despite the progress she had made, despite the moments where she'd felt empowered to keep going, today, she couldn't shake the sense of vulnerability. She had always been the strong one, the one who stood tall, never letting anything break her. But now, as she sat there in the thin hospital gown, with her head shaved and her body frail from treatment, she felt exposed. Her husband, Ethan, sat beside her, offering a comforting smile. His large hand gently held hers, and for a moment, she closed her eyes, drawing strength from his touch. His warm gaze met hers, but Sophie could see the anxiety behind his eyes. He had always been the protector, the one who made everything feel safer, but even he couldn't hide his concern today. It was hard not to. Sophie had changed in so many ways since the diagnosis, and though he loved her more than anything, he could feel the emotional toll it was taking on her, on both of them. The door to the examination room opened with a soft click, and in walked Dr. Lancaster. He was a middle-aged black doctor, tall and well-dressed in his white coat, exuding an air of professionalism. Sophie knew he had been assigned to her case after her regular oncologist had left the practice. She had heard mixed reviews about him. Some said he was efficient, others said he was distant. But nothing had prepared her for the encounter that was about to unfold. Dr. Lancaster walked into the room with a polite but distant nod, not a hint of warmth or empathy in his eyes. Sophie, trying to muster some semblance of composure, offered a small, tired smile, but it was barely a fraction of what she usually had to offer. Ethan, ever the supportive partner, mirrored her smile, but there was a tension in his posture. The air in the room felt thicker now, as if the usual hospital sterility had been replaced by something colder. Sophie sensed something was off as Dr. Lancaster set her chart down, his gaze momentarily flickering over her before quickly moving away. The silence that followed felt heavy. Sophie could feel the weight of the moment, the expectations of a routine checkup, the hope that this would be a simple visit. But as Dr. Lancaster made no attempt to ease the tension, Sophie's anxiety began to grow. What was meant to be a simple medical appointment was quickly turning into something else entirely, though neither she nor Ethan could quite place it just yet. The doctor didn't immediately offer any pleasantries or engage in the usual small talk. Instead, Dr. Lancaster stood by the desk, flipping through Sophie's medical chart with a sense of clinical detachment. His eyes scanned the pages with a focused, almost mechanical intensity, as if Sophie was little more than a set of numbers and symptoms rather than a person sitting right in front of him. The sterile, almost robotic nature of his behavior felt cold and impersonal, an approach that starkly contrasted with the warmth Sophie was accustomed to from her previous doctor. After a few moments, he glanced up, his eyes landing on Sophie's bald head, then quickly shifting back to the chart. He said, almost casually, "So, you're the one who's been losing her hair, huh?" His voice was flat, lacking the empathy Sophie had hoped for, and instead, it felt sharp, like an observation detached from any real care. Sophie blinked, her breath catching in her throat for a moment as she processed his words. She wasn't prepared for the bluntness. Her hands gripped the edges of the hospital gown tighter, trying to hold onto some semblance of dignity in that moment. "Yes," she replied quietly, her voice betraying a hint of the pain she had been suppressing. "Chemotherapy, it's been a tough few months." The doctor didn't respond immediately, his gaze lingering on her bald head for a moment longer than necessary, as if inspecting it like a specimen under a microscope. Then, without skipping a beat, he shifted his attention to Ethan, who was sitting beside her, a protective hand placed over hers. "Must be hard, huh?" Dr. Lancaster continued, his tone distant and almost dismissive. "I can imagine it's a real blow to someone's self-esteem." Sophie's heart sank, the weight of his words landing on her like a stone. She could feel the coldness in his voice, a judgment not just of her physical appearance, but of her very worth. It wasn't just the bluntness that stung. It was the fact that he saw her baldness and couldn't see beyond it. To him, she was just another patient, another case of hair loss, stripped of the dignity and humanity she had left. He didn't see the woman sitting there in front of him, the one who had been fighting relentlessly against cancer, against the pain, and against the constant physical and emotional toll the disease had taken on her. He didn't see the woman who had lost so much more than her hair. Ethan's protective instincts flared. His jaw tightened, and a wave of anger surged through him. He had known from the beginning that Sophie's journey through cancer would be tough, but he never imagined it would be compounded by this kind of cold treatment. This was supposed to be a moment of care, a routine checkup where Sophie would be treated with compassion. But here they were, confronted by a man who seemed completely indifferent to the pain Sophie had endured. The way Dr. Lancaster spoke to her was nothing short of disrespectful, and Ethan could feel the tension in the room thickening with each word. Sophie, on the other hand, felt a wave of vulnerability wash over her. She had never been one to show weakness, but this felt like something more than just a doctor's lack of empathy. It was a dehumanizing experience. How could someone who was supposed to help her, someone who took an oath to care for others, treat her with such casual cruelty? Ethan turned towards Sophie, his hand tightening around hers, a silent promise to stand by her no matter what. He could feel the heat of the moment, the burning sense of injustice bubbling up inside him. His heart ached for Sophie, who had fought so hard to hold onto her strength. And now, here she was enduring not just the physical battle of cancer, but this emotional assault from someone who should have been her ally. Ethan knew right then that something had to change. He couldn't just sit by and let this continue. He had to do something. He had to protect her from the cruelty that was unfolding in front of him. Sophie had been through enough. The last thing she needed was more pain, more humiliation, and certainly not from the person who was supposed to be her healthcare provider. As the tension in the room grew palpable, Ethan's protective instincts kicked into overdrive. His eyes locked onto Dr. Lancaster's, his voice low but laced with a growing intensity. "This isn't right," he thought, as he prepared to speak up, ready to put an end to this treatment once and for all. The doctor's words didn't stop there. "You know," Dr. Lancaster continued, his tone slipping into something even colder, "a lot of people would find it hard to relate to someone like you, blonde, blue-eyed. You probably don't understand what real suffering is, do you?" Sophie's breath caught in her throat. Her chest tightened, and her vision blurred for a moment. She had heard the words, but they felt like they belonged in a nightmare, not a doctor's office. She blinked rapidly, her mouth going dry as she struggled to process what he had just said. Had he really just implied that her suffering didn't matter because of how she looked? That the battle she was fighting wasn't real because she didn't fit some tragic mold in his mind? Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat louder than the last. She was too stunned to respond, her mind racing to grasp the weight of his insult. Her stomach twisted in disbelief. Sophie had faced so much already: diagnosis, treatments, endless hospital visits. And now she had to endure this? She was already vulnerable, exposed in ways that went far beyond the physical. Her hair was gone, her body weakened, and yet this was the moment a doctor chose to attack her character, her experience, and her humanity. He saw only her appearance, ignoring the years of struggle she had been enduring. Ethan's protective instincts, the ones that had always been sharp and ready, flared with a fury he hadn't known he was capable of. He looked at Sophie, her face pale and her eyes wide in shock, and his anger began to bubble over. There was no way he could stand by and allow this to continue. "Not to her. Not now. Not ever." "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" Ethan asked, his voice sharp and low, laced with an edge of anger he could no longer suppress. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. The man he had trusted to treat Sophie, someone who was supposed to provide care, had just crossed a line he didn't know existed. His knuckles tightened around Sophie's hand, his gaze fixed on Dr. Lancaster. The doctor, unfazed by the anger in Ethan's voice, looked up from the chart with a slight frown. He dismissed the situation with a flick of his hand, his tone casual as he muttered, "It's nothing personal, just an observation." His words were cold, almost indifferent, and his dismissive gesture only deepened the sense of insult that hung in the air. He wasn't even offering an apology or any sign of understanding. Sophie could hardly breathe. She had expected the doctor to ask about her progress, to offer some comfort, maybe even words of encouragement. Instead, she had been met with something that felt so far from care. It was suffocating. This wasn't just a medical evaluation. It was an attack on her dignity, her spirit, and her very humanity. His words cut deeper than any physical pain she had ever felt during the treatments. This was something worse, a violation of the trust that patients were supposed to have in their doctors. The silence in the room stretched painfully long. Sophie's eyes darted between Ethan and Dr. Lancaster, the weight of the moment bearing down on her. Her emotions swirled inside her, the hurt, the anger, the confusion, all battling for control. Ethan could see the shock and disbelief in her eyes, and it broke his heart. His strong, confident wife, reduced to this vulnerable, hurt version of herself, was the last thing he ever wanted to witness. Ethan had had enough. His frustration boiled over, and he could feel the tension in his chest, the instinct to protect Sophie from this moment of cruel judgment. He had always known Sophie to be strong, to fight through everything life had thrown at her. But no one deserved to be treated like this. Not her, not in this moment. Ethan stood up, his voice steady but unwavering. "We're done here," he said, turning to Dr. Lancaster with a fire in his eyes. The decision was final. This was not a doctor they would ever trust again. Sophie had been through enough. The last thing she needed was more pain, more judgment, especially from someone who was supposed to be her ally. As Ethan stood tall beside her, Sophie felt the warmth of his support, and for the first time since entering the room, she felt herself starting to breathe again. She didn't have to endure this alone. Ethan's strength was hers, and together, they would face this moment and all the ones to come. Ethan took a step forward, his body tensing as a wave of anger surged through him. His voice, though shaking with emotion, was firm, unwavering, and sharp as a blade. He had always been the calm one, the one who kept a level head in difficult situations. But this was different. "That's enough, Dr. Lancaster," Ethan said, his words ringing out with authority. "You do not get to talk to my wife like that. You don't know her, and you sure as hell don't get to judge her." The room went silent. Sophie could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. Dr. Lancaster's eyes narrowed, his jaw tight as he processed the challenge. It was clear from his reaction that he wasn't used to being confronted, especially not in such an assertive manner. He hadn't expected this kind of pushback. For a moment, he seemed to falter, his composure slipping ever so slightly as his gaze flicked between Ethan and Sophie. "What's your point?" Dr. Lancaster's voice was cool, but there was an edge to it now, as if he was attempting to regain control of the situation. But there was something in Ethan's eyes, something that made it clear that this wasn't a conversation Dr. Lancaster could control. "My point," Ethan continued, stepping closer, his eyes locking onto the doctor with an intensity that left no room for doubt, "is that you're supposed to be a doctor. Your job is to care for people, not demean them. I don't know what's going on in your head, but you crossed a line today. I'm taking my wife out of here, and I'm reporting you." Sophie's breath hitched as the weight of Ethan's words settled in. For the first time in months, she felt something shift inside her, a sense of strength, of being seen and heard. It was as if the burden of being reduced to her disease, of feeling so alone in her fight, was finally being lifted. She had never felt so supported, so validated. The reassurance in Ethan's voice was a balm to the raw wound that Dr. Lancaster's words had inflicted. As Ethan spoke, Sophie felt an overwhelming wave of relief wash over her, her shoulders finally relaxing after being so tense for so long. She had spent countless nights battling cancer on her own, facing it with only her own resolve. But now, in this moment, she was no longer alone. Ethan's words were like a shield, protecting her from the cruelty that had been thrown her way. She felt like she had been seen for the first time in months, not as a patient or a statistic, but as a person worthy of respect and dignity. The doctor stood there, silent for a moment, his mouth opening and closing as if he were about to say something, but no words came. His gaze shifted uncomfortably, and it was clear that he knew he had lost control of the situation. Whatever authority he thought he held had evaporated in that instant. With a muttered word that Sophie could barely catch, he finally broke the silence, his voice now lacking the confidence it had carried when he first entered the room. Sophie could feel the power shift. It was no longer Dr. Lancaster in control. It was her, and it was Ethan. And in that moment, she realized that she was no longer just a patient in a hospital gown. She was a woman standing tall, with the love and support of the person who mattered most by her side. Ethan guided Sophie out of the room, his hand firmly holding hers as their footsteps echoed through the quiet hallway. The weight of the confrontation still lingered in the air, but as they walked away, Sophie felt something new begin to stir inside her, a strange, unexpected sense of peace. It was as though the heavy cloud of humiliation had started to dissipate, replaced by the clarity that comes from knowing someone has your back, no matter what. For the first time in what felt like ages, she didn't feel like just a cancer patient. She didn't feel defined by the baldness, the scars, or the ongoing treatments. In that moment, Sophie was simply a person who had been seen, understood, and defended by the one who mattered most. The cold, impersonal treatment from Dr. Lancaster had made her feel invisible and small, but Ethan's words, his strength, had changed that. She felt valued. She felt protected. For the first time in months, she could breathe without the constant weight of fear and uncertainty pressing down on her. As they reached the exit, the door opening into the parking lot, the evening air seemed to breathe new life into them. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden glow across the landscape, making everything look just a little bit brighter. The shadows of the day began to stretch long and soft, and Sophie found herself absorbing the peaceful quiet of the moment. It was as if the universe was reflecting what was happening in her heart. Hope, relief, and a sense of solidarity. She turned her face toward the sky, letting the warmth of the sun touch her skin. Sophie looked up at Ethan, her heart swelling with gratitude. Her lips parted, forming the smallest of smiles, the kind that only those who truly understand you can inspire. It wasn't a smile born of joy, but of deep, unspoken appreciation. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Ethan's expression softened, his eyes filled with love and unwavering support. He squeezed her hand gently, grounding her in that moment. "You don't ever have to thank me," he said, his voice steady and full of certainty. "I've got your back always." The simplicity of his words was all she needed to hear. It was the kind of promise that didn't need embellishment. Ethan's love and loyalty were more than enough. Together, they walked out into the parking lot, the soft sound of their footsteps mingling with the fading warmth of the day. The challenges of the past, the uncertain road ahead, none of it seemed as daunting with Ethan by her side. Sophie no longer felt alone in the fight. No matter what came next, they would face it together, side by side. Hand in hand, they were ready to tackle whatever challenges the future held, armed with love, strength, and an unbreakable bond. They had each other, and that was all that truly mattered. This story highlights not just the struggle of living with cancer, but also the power of standing up against prejudice and discrimination. It's a reminder that no matter the obstacles, love, support, and a strong voice can make all the difference. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Your support means everything to us. Stay tuned for more inspiring stories, and remember, we're all in this together. Sometimes, life may push you back instead of moving you forward. You may feel like everything is falling apart, but when your partner is with you, sincere, supporting you, life starts anew from a different angle. Sophie and Ethan's story proves that when you have a true partner by your side, no difficulty is insurmountable. Love, support, and being there for each other is what can truly change everything. Never feel alone in life. The real strength of life is in those who walk alongside you.